Hey everyone, welcome to TTP Laser. I'm Ray.
And I'm Jessica. In today's video, we're going to do a quick start guide for your TTP machine.
Let's get started.
This video's instructions are for after you have completed the physical setup of your machine, you have installed the software, and you have port test success, that you have filled your chiller all the way to the top with either distilled water or deionized water. Now we can go over the basics of RDWorks and go over the machines to get you cutting and engraving and get you started working on your laser.
Alright, welcome to your RDC 6445G controller. We're going to show you all of the functions and features from this controller. First thing we're going to do is we're going to turn on our laser machine. And when you turn on your laser machine, the laser is going to reset itself. Alright, we're reset and ready to go. So let's go through all of the buttons on the control panel. Some people call this the controller. This is actually the control panel. The controller itself, or motherboard, is inside the side of the laser machine. So, starting on the top, menu. The menu button is something you don't need to use a lot, and even especially to get started. I'm just going to give you a quick tour. It's not something you need to worry about, but you press the menu button and it will open up different functions and features for specialty setups, depending on if you want to make some small changes. It'll give you some basic instructions like user setting. So when you get to user setting, you click on enter and it opens up user setting. In here you can change cut parameter, sweep parameter, different things that you really don't need to worry about at this time. If you want to scroll through, you're going to use your arrow keys to scroll through. Once you're done, you can click escape, ESC, and it will bring you back one page. Press escape again and it brings you back to your main page. Next button we're going to click on is File. File is where you're going to go when you're ready to cut, and it's going to give you a list of all of your files. The last file that you downloaded to your controller is going to be the first file that's going to come up, but you can use your arrow keys to scroll through the menu of all of the files that you have previously downloaded to your controller. Once you find the file that you want, press enter, and the file will come up on your screen. Now, one thing I want to point out here, because people get a little bit confused sometimes, is your speed and power. So if you look on the top half of the controller, it's going to say speed 400 millimeters per second, max power 98% power. That actually is not related to your design. This design is going to run at 550 millimeters per second and 90% power. So what the top one means is, we're going to get to that actually in 1 second. When you have your design entered into the panel, simply click the start button and your design is going to start going. Click pause, it will pause. I pick start and it will continue again. Stop, we'll stop it. Alright, now for the top buttons, speed and power, click on your power button, and here you have a menu showing the power setting. But this power setting does not apply to your design. It applies specifically to your pulse button, which we're going to get to later, to fire the pulse. If you click on your speed button, we have it set at 400 millimeters. That's not related to your design. That's related to the speed in which your laser head will move when you're moving the head manually with your arrows. And as I was saying, you can select the speed you want your laser head to move and the power you want your pulse to fire at by pressing the button here. And you can go in here and you can just change the numbers to your numeric panel here. Once you've changed the numbers, click enter and it will leave it set to that. If you want to do speed, same thing, press the speed button. And you can change your speed to 100, anything that you want, and press enter, and that speed will be set for moving your laser head manually. The next button on top is your reset button. Pressing reset will reset your laser the same as it does if you turn your laser machine off. When you turn it back on, it will reset to the top right corner. The reset button will do the same thing. Okay, that covers these buttons. We're going to move over to this side. On the top here we have your pulse button, which is very handy, very useful. Now again, the power of that pulse button is controlled by the amount of power you set in the power switch here. So when you press the pulse button, you're going to have a beam. Your beam is going to fire, and it's going to fire a dot through your lens, or you're going to use it when you're aligning your mirrors. You're going to put tape on your mirrors, press pulse, and it will fire a laser beam, so it shows you where the laser beam is shooting. Next button we have here is the focus button. For focus, you're going to set your laser head over your material, and you're going to make sure that your laser pin is directly above the material, and you're going to press the focus button. Then you're going to press the enter button, and you're going to notice that your bed is going to start moving. It's going to move up, it's going to move down, and it's going to settle at the proper focus distance to focus, cut or engrave the specific material you're working on. Alright, next let's talk about the origin button. Before I do that, I'm going to show you how it functions in real life. I'm going to bring a file in. Bring the file, click enter. My file is in and ready to go. So now I'm going to click the origin button with my head set exactly where I want the design to engrave. I'm going to press origin, and at this point you can move your laser head wherever you want, move it away. When you click the start button, it's going to automatically bring the head back to wherever you selected your origin. Now it's not firing here because we don't have our chiller on. Without the chiller, the beam will not fire. Now if you turn your laser machine off and you come back days later and you have a different design, you want to do it in a different place, you're going to have to move your laser head to where you want it, and again click origin. Now the origin is going to work in conjunction with the setting that you set in either RDWorks or Lightburn. Next we have the frame button. The frame button, since we haven't changed the origin, at least I don't think I changed the origin, the frame button is going to make your head move around the parameter of where your design is going to be, so you know that you're actually going to be engraving in the right area. So we'll go ahead and press it, and you'll notice that this is showing us the mark where that specific design is going to engrave. Okay, on the bottom right side of your controller, you have your arrow keys, you have your Z arrows, U plus, U minus you're not going to use. This is for an auto feed bed where you have the conveyor on there that actually moves. So let's start with the arrow keys. You probably figured this out by now. Left arrow key moves your head left, moves it right, to the back of the machine, to the front of the machine. Your Z is for raising and lowering your bed. So you're going to lower your bed and you're going to raise your bed. One thing that's important to note here, when you're using your arrow keys, if you're moving your laser head across the table, pushing it, depending on what speed you have, slow down before you get to the end. You don't want to smash your laser head into the side of the machine. If you do, you're going to trip the limit switch, and you're going to have to reset the laser because the laser head won't move until you reset it. And lastly, on the controller, you have your button in the center here, which a lot of people aren't aware of. This is something we're going to discuss in a future video. It's not important at this point. It's a little bit of an advanced use, but it's going to control continue or manual movement of your laser head. You can have it set on either one at this point. It's not going to make a difference.
Alright, let's go over the top panel and what all of these buttons do. So the first one you have here lights up the back LED strip light on the back of your machine. This one is the rail light so that you can see your project a lot better. The top light we have. Then over here we have our air bypass switch. So normally the air will run as soon as you press start on your design, but only when you are running a design. So this isn't very helpful when you need to pulse your machine. You don't want smoke to get up and contaminate your lens, so you can go ahead and turn your air bypass on, and now you have air coming out of your laser head there. Here is the rotary button where you can switch over to rotary once you plug it in. Then you can press this button, which will turn off the Y-axis, and you can get going with your rotary. Of course, here you have your power switch, also with a light indicator, and this is your emergency switch. For shipping purposes, it will come down, so you do have to turn on the emergency switch so that your machine will actually turn on.
Now, most of the functions on your laser machine are only going to work when your emergency switch is deactivated and the power of the laser machine is on. However, we have a few here that we actually want it to run continuous for different reasons. Here is your exhaust switch, which you're going to use to turn on your AC Infinity exhaust fan. Now, that fan also comes with a speed control, so you can press this button and you can scroll through the different speeds that you can power your exhaust fan at. The exhaust fan, we want it to run continuous in the event that you're done at project, but you still want to exhaust more fumes out of your laser machine or your shop. Next, we have the air switch, which will turn on your compressor. And finally, we have the chiller. Also, we like to let the chiller run a little bit after your project is done, so we're not going to turn it off right away. So this also works whether your machine is on or off. The chiller needs to be on in order for the laser tube to fire. If your tube's not firing, good chance that this switch is not activated. Down below we have where you're going to connect your USB from your computer to the laser machine to download your files. Below that we have USB drive where you can insert a USB stick and you can transfer your files from the computer to the laser via the USB stick. Now, here's a little secret that apparently a lot of our customers who had lasers for a few years don't even realize. When you're working in your components area, you actually have a light switch on the back here, so you can turn the light on, and it kind of makes all the difference when you're working in here. This light switch will also go on when the laser machine is turned off, because it's common sense that if you're going to work in here, you're going to turn the laser machine off first, but you'll have light.
All right, now we got a lot of those basics covered, so let's move over to RDWorks, where we are going to go over the basics, set your settings, and send your file to your laser machine.
Okay, so here we are in RDWorks. We're going to go through some of the basic functions, and of course remember there's a lot of advanced techniques that you'll be learning as you go, but for now we're going to get you up and running. Let's start with putting a design, simply making a design in the software. We'll go over to the square, and we're just going to make a square. Now you'll notice up here on the right side it opened up a layer called Laser Scan. It's selected to blue. Now you can select any one of the 20 square colors on the bottom, and you can set up each one of them individually for different purposes. They'll always stay at whatever settings you set them to unless you go into that layer and change it again. So right now this is set to, again, look up here, and it says scan, so it's set to scan. We're going to change that to cut. We're going to double click on it. It's going to open this dialog box, and here where it says processing mode, we're going to change that to cut. Now for the first time on any of the 20 layers, you're going to notice that you have minimum power and maximum power. You have 1 and 2 checked. We're going to uncheck number 2, and you're eventually going to want to do that in each of them. You don't have to, it's just a bit of an annoying nuisance that goes in there. This is meant for laser machines running 2 tubes. You only have 1 tube, so you only need 1 selected. Now from there we're going to go over to the through power, and we're going to change the through power. For now we're going to change the through power to 100. So you have it set to cut. You have your min power and max power. We can set that. You can set it here, but you can also set it over on the right. So we're going to go back to the right and set it there. We'll click OK. Now your blue parameter is set to through power 100, and it's set to cutting. Let's make another design, and this time we're going to select. Of course you get two designs here now, and they're both blue, so it still only shows 1 layer. But we want to do something different. We want to cut this one, and we want to engrave this one. So we're going to select this one, and we're going to change the color. Let's change it to red. Up here now you have 2 layers. They both say laser cut, but this one we want to engrave, so we're going to double click on the red one, open up the dialog box, and of course here we have number 2 selected again. Let's just uncheck that so it's out of the way. but we're going to change this to scan for engraving. So we now have it selected to scan. We're going to go over to the right side here, and for interval, yours is probably set to 254 millimeters. It's a little inconvenient and a little bit of math trying to figure out the interval in meters, but if you click down on the millimeter box here, you can select DPI and we can measure it in DPI. So you now have 254 DPI. For the red parameter, it will always be set to 254 DPI unless you go into it a second time and you change it to something new. So we can X out of here. This design is now going to engrave. This design is going to cut. So if you want to do them together, we can go up here, and we're not going to get into this today, but of course you have some design features. You can center it, and now it's going to engrave this, and then it's going to cut it out. On the right hand side, let's choose the settings that we want for each parameter. Let's start with laser cut. So laser cut we have set to 40 speed and 0 power. That's not going to do anything. Let's say for example we're cutting 1/4 inch Baltic birch, which is quite common. Let's set our power to 90, and min power is something that we're going to talk about later. But for the most part, you can always set these the same. In a later video, we're going to explain why you would want to change these. So we'll set that. And for speed, we're going to cut Baltic birch at, let's make it simple, and cut it at 15. That way we're protected. If we hit a knot, we're covered. So your cutting layer is now set. We're going to go over to laser scan, and we're going to click on that. And we're going to set the speed that you want to engrave at. So we're engraving 1/4 inch Baltic birch. Let's set the power to 70 and max power 70, and we're going to set the speed to 700.
The speed settings go from 0 to 1000, and the power settings go from 1 to 100.
That's right. So here we're ready to go. You have your settings and everything. Now before we download this to the machine, I want you to make note of this little green square in the bottom right corner. And this is going to work in conjunction with the origin button on your panel that we talked about earlier. So we're going to go to, on the top left, Config, System Settings. Now you have your homing position set to the top right. If you don't, then select top right. What we want to focus on here though is your laser head. So let's say, for example, you have a sheet of plywood that you want to cut. Your Baltic birch is a square sheet of plywood. Right now it's selected to the bottom right. That means you would move your laser head on the laser machine to the bottom right of your material and select the origin button. That will place your design in this area. If you were wanting to change to engrave or cut the top left of your plywood, you simply select this, or you select whichever one you want. This can be handy if you're doing something like a cutting board and you want to center a name in the center of the cutting board. You simply measure your cutting board, make a mark where the center of the cutting board is, and select the center. Move your laser head to your mark on the cutting board in the center of the cutting board, select origin, and now this is your cutting board, and the name will start in the center and it will engrave perfectly in the center. From there you can go ahead and you can click download to download your design to the laser machine. Our machine is currently turned off, so we're going to have communication error. If your machine is turned on, you simply add a name for your file, and you can go ahead and click download and it will send the file to your laser machine. Alright, so now you have your file sent from the computer to the laser machine. Let's come over to the laser machine. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to find your file. We're going to click on the File button. It will always be the first one in your list of files. So in this case we sent one called Test. We're going to click Enter. We now have it set up. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to use the arrow keys to move our laser head. If you remember right, we selected the center of the 9 dots. So we can move our laser head over to the center of your material. And at this point we're going to click Origin. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to click the frame button so we can visually see that it is actually going to engrave where we want it to. And that's perfect. So from here we're going to click the focus button, and after focus you're going to click enter. We've already focused this one, so we're good. Now remember, we have to go over to the side because the laser beam is not going to fire unless we have the chiller on. Also, you never want to fire your laser beam without the air. So you want your air on. Exhaust, if you don't want to choke to death, of course you're going to put your exhaust on. Now at this point we're going to close our lid. The laser beam will not fire with the lid open. And we're going to click Start from your panel. Your machine is now running. Now if you'll notice, the light on the front of the machine has turned from green to red. If you're looking at our logo here, when the machine is idle it's green and now it's red. If you press the pause button, this is your, also not just a pretty logo, this is your working light, so when it's paused your light will be blue. You can come back here, and one thing to notice is that you could actually move, at this point you can actually move your laser head out of the way over here, wherever you want, and you click Start again, and it will go right back and continue where it was. Of course, we could turn some lights on in there. So you can see now it's engraving. Your laser will always do the engraving first and the cutting last. The reason for that is because if you cut the piece first, the piece can move. We don't want it to move and then not engrave perfectly. You can change the darkness of your engraving by the amount of power and speed that you set, and that's something you'll figure out with your machine. And now we're ready to cut. Now we're going to just let the exhaust pull all of the smoke out of the machine before we turn it off. Once that's done, you're ready to go. You can click Exit. You're ready to stop. Turn your machine off. And you can turn everything off. And there you have it. Your design is done.